Morons, it's Victor, Gimme Flake Man, and for the first time ever you are in my bedroom, which is I think the appropriate place to be, since today's topic is going to be a response to a very popular article that's going around. It was on The Guardian, and it's written by Abigail Haworth, and it's called Why Young People in Japan Have Stopped Having Sex. And Maggie Sensei is here. Come here, baby. Maggie Sensei is here to make sure to keep me honest, okay? Okay, let's get started. Now, first of all, a couple things. I'll be done soon, honey. Okay, a couple things that are interesting about this whole thing. Well, let me give you some facts that are not in the article that I think are interesting and something we should be commented upon. First of all, things that are kind of interesting. The average age first-time sex, the first what's it called? Shohatsu? What's it called? First time you have sex? Hatsu taiken? What is it? Hatsu taiken. Hatsu-taiken, okay, that's how they say having sex for the first time. Now, in Malaysia, it's pretty old, it's like in the 20s, 23 or something. The youngest people in the world are Australians. So basically, Australians are all sluts and whores. And 17.3 years old. That's how young Australians are. So if you're into 17-year-olds, they'll go down there. Japan's average age is 19.4, which I think is pretty healthy. I'll give you a chart in the description. You can go and check out all the other countries, see where your country is. You can post it in the comments, okay? How many? Some condom company did a big poll, and they asked all these people all over the world what age, how many times they have. Hard to concentrate here. How many times they have sex a year? And Japanese have sex 48 times a year, which is roughly once a week, right? Roughly once a week. That's about right, Yoko? Once a week. So, out of 26 countries, Japan came in last. So there you go. That kind of sucks. Other interesting information: men on average get married at the age of 30.5, and women at 28.8 years. So women and men are both about 30 years old when they get married. So there you go. I think it's a little bit higher than in America. I think in America it's a little bit younger. But another interesting thing about that is, I think the more industrialized a country is, the older people are when they get married. It's good. It's basically saying that society is giving those people other options. Women aren't being forced to get married to escape their homes. So there's something to think about. Anyway, I know a lot of women who do, in other countries, who do want to just get out of the house, and their escape is a man. Okay? Okay. Now, drinking strong zero tea. Now, the article goes on to talk about, first of all, some of the article is kind of, it's crap. If you don't know anything about Japan, it's like, it's interesting. But the woman's name is Ai Aoyama, that she interviews in the beginning, who is an ex-dominatrix that's now helping people with their sex problems, helping them connect with other people. And she makes a little comment about how Ai means love. And, there's Ai as a first name in Japan is not a big deal. The fact that your name means love in Japan is not a big deal. It's like a Mexican whose name is Jesus, okay? Jesus. You'd never have anyone in America named Love or Jesus, but that's the way it is in Japan, okay? And before she became a counselor, I guess a love counselor, she did normal things. She did the usual things, like tying people up and dripping hot wax on their nipples. How do you say nipples in Japanese? I forget. Do you guys remember? If you do, please put it in the comments, right? But those tying up things and those normal things that they talk about, these are things that a lot of foreigners focus on. And it's things like, what's it called? Something shibari. I forgot shibari. Something shibari. S&M shibari? Anyway, it's tying people up. It's not very common. I've never seen it done. If you want to see that done, you can see it done, but you've got to go to a special club. So stuff like that they point out in this article as usual, it's actually very, very rare, okay? But Aoyama is trying to cure, this sexual counselor is trying to cure what Japanese media calls sekkusu shinai shoukougun, and she spells it wrong. It's a long O and long O, and I'll put it for those of you studying Japanese. It's a lot of notes in the description. Check those out. And it's called celibacy syndrome. Now, I don't agree that this is actually celibacy, because celibacy is actually a desire not, well, we can argue this, but if you decide to be celibate, it means you decide actively not to have sex. A lot of the people are not having sex in Japan, not because they're deciding not to, but because they're just not meeting anyone, but they want to. Okay? And another question is being celibate mean you don't do anything to relieve any kind of sexual tension? If you know what I mean? For those of you who know more about celibacy, and I'm sure a lot of you do. I don't know much about that. Please tell me in the comments if relieving yourself is still considered celibacy. Anyway, another interesting thing about this woman in this clinic, this woman Ai Oyama, the sex counselor, is that she has a dog named Marilyn Monroe. And in Japan, I noticed that a lot of Japanese name their dogs after like after Westerners, like John. John is a typical dog's name, right? Maggie, of course, is a typical dog's name, but in any country. Anyway, and there's a lot of extra. I'm not going to go through the whole article, but there's something that the woman said that I couldn't understand what she was talking about. Apparently, the woman tells her patients to stop apologizing for their own physical existence, and I don't know what that could possibly mean. You know, I don't see Japanese people doing that, but whatever. Anyway, some statistics from the article is that in 2011, 61% of unmarried men, and 49% of unmarried women, aged between 18 and 34, and I mentioned this in the last video, are not in any kind of romantic relationship. Okay, so yeah, a little bit more than before. But again, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's not necessarily a bad thing. It could mean that they're doing other things and they have freedom to not find to not need a relationship to define themselves. So I don't think it's such a bad thing. There's a lot of people who are serial monogamists, and so it seems like, I'm sure you have friends like this who always seem that they have to have somebody in their relationship, or they can't define themselves, or they think their happiness is based on being in a relationship with someone. But I think you really only know yourself when you're alone, when you figure that out, and then you make an active decision to be with someone else, right? Anyway, let's go on. Oh, wait, but this was interesting. Apparently 30% of people under 30 have never ever dated at all, which I find phenomenal and sad. But I kind of believe that. I know a lot of my students have never had boyfriends or girlfriends, or have had only a few, very, very little. This article goes on to say what I mentioned in the last article, that this country is free of religious morals, and I called it Christian BS. But what I meant by that is the hypocrisy that does exist in all of society, and Christianity, of course, does too. I'm not trying to insult all Christians for that. I have some Christian friends, and they're wonderful people. But of course, the Pope defending pedophiles in the church, like that kind of stuff is just crazy, and saying you can't do this and you can't do that, when you know what I'm saying. It's just we could do a whole video on that. But anyway, and another thing that I thought was sad was apparently 45% of women between ages 16 and 24 were not interested in or despised sexual contact. But 16 is very young in Japan. You have to remember, when you meet an 18-year-old girl in Japan, and I've had students all the way from junior high to old 85-year-old women in my classroom, of course, not in any other way. But they mature psychologically slower than Western women. So when you see a 16-year-old girl, an 18-year-old girl in Japan, she seems almost like she's a 12 or 14-year-old girl. So the sexual maturity is much slower here. You will see, of course, exceptions to that, but it's very rare. It's not like in America, where people are very sexually active in their teens. So the fact that they despise sexual contact, I find a little surprising. But at the same time, if you're psychologically much younger, it's to be expected. And also remember that families here, you live with your family for a long time. It's not a big deal to live with your family, even if you have a job. You don't move out. It's why bother? Why waste the money? Okay, so there's that as well. What else is going on here? Remember, this is one of these uncut videos I'm doing. I'm just responding to the article. Now, as I mentioned in the last article, diaper sales for adults are more than for children now. So that's amazing. And, oh yeah, this is something interesting. Japan's under 40s won't go forth and multiply out of duty as post-war generations did. And that's true. During World War II, before World War II and World War I, the Japanese government actively, they did these massive campaigns, and it was your duty, basically, to the country to make children. To support the war effort, which would the expansion of Japan and all that later. Anyway, they talk about a lot of there's a lot of Japanese words that are coming up, and these are useful. A lot of the clients that this woman treats are hikikomori, or the slang for that, which is not in this article, is hikkii, right? And she talks about, of course, otaku and parasaito shinguru. Parasite singles, of course, are like I just mentioned, people who don't leave the house. They decide to stay at home. But some of those don't contribute anything to the family. Though a lot of my students who do that say they pay rent. So it isn't everybody who stays home is not necessarily like that. Okay. There is something weird, and there's something that I noticed in Japan. It's not that common, but she mentions it too. People sometimes flinch if I touch them, she says, and it's very, like I said, very rare. But there have been a few. Japanese are not good at at physical contact in general. Even my wife, when I first met her, and I hugged her, she thought that was a little bit strange. Though she enjoyed it, I think. But I don't know. We could wake her up. But anyway. But some people, you touch them a little bit, you give them a hug. They're like, oh, don't touch me. And it's not. The flinching is not necessarily disgust. It's more like, what are you doing? I'm not used to this, right? They're very bad at handshakes. I teach my students how to shake hands. They cannot shake hands. There's 4 types of bad handshakes: the zombie handshake, the won't let go handshake, the left-handed receive, and the duck grasp. And we can get into that if you're interested. I'll make another video. Let me know if you're interested in that. But I really have to teach them how to shake hands. They're not used to physical contact. So let's see. This woman, this sexual clinic person, apparently wants to see her nation survive it, which is why she's helping people learn how to touch other people, which I kind of doubt. And she sees herself as an oiran, but I do see that a lot of Japanese do feel that they are, in fact, still in a psychological way living as samurais or ninjas or oiran, and I see some students call themselves things like that. Now, not oiran. Oiran, by the way, this woman sees herself as an oiran, which is apparently a kind of a sexual teacher that samurais would employ to bring their sons into the world. But it's not much unlike prostitutes are used in Texas or Mexico. And I'm quoting an old governor who says that his first sexual experience was with a prostitute. His dad took him down to a whorehouse and got him laid. That's basically what they do. They go down and say, hey, my son's 17 or 18 now, whatever age I guess it is. And, teach him the ropes. So this is what she sees herself as, this kind of job. But kind of interesting, like, humans are humans. Things that we think are weird, we do the same thing. We just, we label it a little differently. Okay. Here's a really interesting Japanese expression that is in the description. Kekkon wa jinsei no hakaba, which means marriage is life's grave, which is one reason apparently why women are not getting married or avoid getting married. Another reason, of course, is the appearance of this kind of man called the Sōshoku-kei danshi, which is basically a weak kind of, they call it herbivore man, herbivore boy or man. And Maggie Sensei does an excellent lesson explaining these things. She also talks about nikushoku-kei joshi, which is kind of a carnivorous woman. So the roles are being reversed a little bit. And a few years ago, there's a TV show came out that is not well known among. Well, I mean, if you saw it, you remember it. But if you didn't, you wouldn't remember it. It isn't like Lost or something. It's called Otome. Otomen. I'm sorry, Otomen. And Otome is a kind of a way to say lady. So basically, as Schwarzenegger would say, girly men. Girly men. So otomen are like girly men, and so it was a TV show about a guy who's really tough, but he'd like to go home and make cupcakes or something. So apparently it appealed to a lot of men here in Japan who have a softer side or like cute things. And the cute thing is all over the place. A lot of guys like cute things. And I gotta say, you think you're avoiding. We are all, how do I say that, victims of mass marketing, and we cannot avoid it. And I gotta say, even I am a victim. Before I come to Japan, I never would have thought I would own a stuffed doll, but I've got a few. I've got a few stuffed bears and stuff. I gotta say though, mine are kind of manly stuffed bears. I got one called Gloomy, which is this bear that's got blood on his claws and on his mouth because he ate some people. But if you didn't have the blood, it'd be a pretty cute bear, except for the claws. But I mean, and I have one piece, flag in the background of my man cave back there. But I have no real interest in the manga. I just think it's cute. So I have to say, even I am a victim of the mass marketing stuff. Anyway, So that's what else do we have here? Women's grave. Okay. The other thing is about women who, and I mentioned this again in the last video. If you get married and you have a job, often your chances of getting promoted are slim, which contradicts a lot of people, a lot of journalists claims that Japan is not having sex because women have more freedom. Yeah, they have more freedom, but Japan is not actually that open to women who are married and are in the workplace. And of course, this happens in America as well. If you're married and in the workplace, I'm sure you're going to have, it's an uphill battle. I'm sure that you don't have to necessarily be Japanese to suffer from that kind of sexual discrimination. But there's something in the article that claims that women like this are called oniyome, which literally stands for devil bride. But I asked a few students, and they're like, "We've never heard that. We've never heard anyone call a working wife an oniyome." So, but apparently it doesn't mean a bad wife. And the other thing about this article that kind of contradicts itself is it interviews a woman who says, "I don't want a boyfriend or girlfriend, but I have one night stands sometimes." So that's not having sex. I'm pretty sure I know what happens on a one night stand. Okay, I'm not gonna go any more into that, but anyway. Now the other thing is about men who don't want to date women because they're afraid of leading them on, and they don't want to get married, so they just give up. They think, what's the point? Which is kind of in a way honorable, because I think a lot of Western men would be like, nah, I'm gonna like George Clooney. I mean, that guy just, come on, settle down, George. People are tired of that, No, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, if you start dating a guy, well, I think Western women think they can change a man, and even if he says I'm not interested in marriage, they think they can land him, and they often do. And I think Japanese women are the same, and that's what happened to me. That's why I'm in this bed right now. Anyway, yes, I guess that's about it. Oh, here's something else that's kind of really interesting about working hours. Working hours. How many hours do people work a week? Yeah, this article cites that men work 20 hours a day, which is just ridiculous and physically impossible. You would be dead soon, which does happen, but it's not as common as it used to be. Japan's average is actually lower than the worldwide average per year. The worldwide average for people for working hours per year is 1,765 hours a year. So that's the world average, okay? 1,765 hours per year. In Japan, it's actually 1,745. Excuse me. And in America, it's more. It's 1,790. So if anyone should be complaining and not having sex, it's Americans. But I'm betting Americans probably have sex in the workplace. So who knows? Anyway, the last excuse me, the last thing I want to comment on is the sentence in the article. Remaining single was once the ultimate personal failure. What's thought to be that, but not anymore. People are saying that it's not. And again, I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's probably a good thing that people can remain single. And again, I think they're making a big mountain out of a molehill. Yeah, maybe sex is down, but I'd like to see studies about sex in other countries. Is sex going up or down? Maybe you guys can find that. Maybe you know that. I am doing my best. I was doing my best to make sure that this was not the case in Japan. However, I'm now retired, so I'll leave it up to my younger brethren, dirty stinking gaijins, to take up the slack there. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'm sorry this is so long as usual, but it was really hard to concentrate between these two flowers, ryote ni hana. If you don't know what that means, check the description. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all very soon. Good night.